Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, while we love flying the flag for cinema from all across the world here and in the seats, we can't lie that at the end of the day, we got to fly our home colors and support our industry the strongest. And you know, if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with Once More. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because, let's face it, you're listening right now. Please subscribe to the podcast. Hit the like button, give us the old 5-star rating. On your podcast provider of choice. We're over at Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, pretty much everywhere. And plus, we archive every one of our episodes at our In the Seats YouTube channel, so if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Letterboxd, and we're on the TikTok for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, but, most importantly, please pay us a visit over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because, if we love to write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please, pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a good one because this weekend, starting tonight, we are in Kingston, Ontario for the Kingston Canadian Film Festival, which is a fantastic homegrown festival which highlights some of the best that Canada has to offer. And I mean, really, the reality is that, Canada has such a diverse film industry and a diverse slate of films that keep coming out every year. And some of them we've reviewed here at this site. I mean, there's films like Bones of Crows, Brother, which just paid over at TIFF. We had Ever Deadly, also from TIFF. The hilarious I Like Movies, things like Eternal Spring, which was a fantastic documentary, which was shortlisted for the Oscar, and a myriad from others from all over our fantastic province. But, if, like I said, if you're in Kingston, please check them out because, again, there's a lot of really fantastic films here. But in advance of this, we had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with, the Executive Director of the Kingston Canadian Film Festival, Mr. Marc Garniss, and we talked with him about just sort of the origins of the fest and the mission and how Ontario is really, especially Kingston, it is really starting to come up and sort of develop its own very significant film community, not just from watching and viewing, but I mean from films being made there. There is one premiering at the festival this year, and so we talked about that and a lot more. And it's again, it's one of those things where we love, supporting Canadian film is important. And I mean, if you live in Kingston and you're within the sound of my voice, check it out because go to their website at kingcanfilmfest.com and just check out all the details. There's still plenty of tickets available, and there's lots of fun events going on as well because it's not just about watching movies, but there's industry events and there's workshops, and I mean, there's again a lot of great stuff going on here. But do check out the Kingston Canadian Film Festival, which is running from tonight, March 2nd, until Sunday the 5th, if you're in the Kingston area. But first, enjoy our talk with Marc Garniss, because between you and me, it is a darn good one. Just to kick this off officially, Marc, obviously, thank you so much for the time today. And I mean, I'm really looking forward to the fest next week, man.
Yeah, us too. Good to finally get to try it again for a few years.
Well, this is officially the first year you guys are back in person, right?
Yeah, last year we did a hybrid, so it was the in-person component was really small. Like we did, I think, under 10 screenings, and they were at half capacity. It was right around the time the restrictions were changing. So like some of the venues weren't selling popcorn, and people were, I think the mask mandate had just lifted. So people were still feeling weird about that. And it didn't we still definitely leaned on the digital festival last year, even though there was an in-person component. And then in 2021, it was all digital. And then in 2020, our festival that year ran March 11th to 15th. So we didn't get very far in that
You
one.
just got in, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we got opening night in. Yeah.
Now, I mean, obviously, I mean, in doing my research, like I hadn't realized that this festival had been around since 2001. I mean, can you walk me through a little bit of the origin of why of the reason for starting the festival? I guess would be the right word to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess the real quick lowdown on it is it was started by a Queen's student in Queen's Film and Media, and that person was working at the Screening Room, which is still our main venue 23 years later, but it's Kingston's small indie theater, and so yeah, it was very much a student centered event for like the first 3 or 4 years, and then took off from there, like getting bigger films and guests and filmmakers attending, and it's grown incrementally since then. So now, we say we're the largest all Canadian film festival, and there's not many of those out there, but of the ones that do play only Canadian film, I think we get the biggest attendance, have the biggest lineup, and most of the big name Canadian filmmakers have been to our festival at some point in the last 23 years. But yeah, it started as a small little student event and just kind of took off from there. And that individual who founded the festival has stayed very involved with it over the years and is actually still in Kingston teaching at Queen's Film now.
That Canadian can-do spirit, I absolutely love it. Now, I mean, one thing about this, I mean, obviously it supports Canadian film, but at the same time, it's seemingly grown to support Canadian industry and Canadian filmmakers as well. And I mean, and I mean, this is something like people on the outside looking in don't necessarily know, especially in the last 10 to 20 years. Ontario has become quite a bit of a hub for filmmaking. I mean, and not just from, sort of the Hollywood people coming in looking for their tax credit, but from like sort of a lot of homegrown productions. Can you talk to me a little bit just about sort of the industry component and really trying to support what is so important in my view, which is really our homegrown filmmaking industry?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, a lot of these films that we're playing would not play in Kingston otherwise. And I think even like over in Toronto, there's probably some titles that may hit the theaters there that would not hit theaters here. So like truly most of our lineup will not make it to the big screen in Kingston. I'm scanning through the titles right now. We're not playing Sarah Pauli's latest film. So, it's possible that there might only be 1 or 2 of these that actually make it to the big screen here. So, and then the industry as a whole is changing as well. Just like what's the importance of theatrical releases for some films. Like I think Deepa Mehta's last film, I believe, was just straight to Netflix, and that's a filmmaker who over the years we've probably played almost all her films at the festival. So yeah, for people that are still into like the movie going experience, it's really the only opportunity to see a lot of these films on the big screen, and then even take it a step further. It's oftentimes the only chance to see these films in general as well. Now with the Craves and the Netflix and different ways of watching stuff online, sure, some of them may become available there. But a question we always get asked after the festival for some of our smaller, more indie titles is like, how can I recommend this film to my friend? Where can they go see it? And sometimes we just don't know, and a lot of these films don't, I think they still really lean on events like KCFF to get out there. And it plays a big part in their release plans anyways. So, and then, the festival experience, I think as well is so much more than people just going to the movies and sitting there and watching the film on the screen. It's the filmmakers that we attract to the festival who do the Q&As and intros and take part in the festival more holistically. I think that's really important as well. So it's not us just showing this content to people, but it's also like introducing these filmmakers and these people to our audience as well. So I feel like we play an important part in that, and I think filmmakers still do lean on KCFF for some of these release plans that they have.
Well, and I mean, something that stood out for me was because, I mean, obviously, a lot of these films have done the festival circuit, but at the same time, there does seem to be a good selection of French Canadian films playing in the festival as well. And I mean, especially in Toronto where I am, I mean, we'll see some of this stuff at the festival, but
Yeah.
it won't necessarily get a release. And I mean, I'm kind of curious from a programming mandate, because I mean, you know, from a geographical standpoint, I mean, Kingston is kind of the halfway point or almost sort of between, you know, Toronto and
Mhm.
Montreal. How big is it for you
Mhm.
guys to sort of try to have some French Canadian representation in a program like this?
I'd say like just very generally over the years, the French Canadian films are often are among our best films. So whether those are winning our People's Choice Award or not, just like what I hear from our audience and just like my own observations and that of our programmers as well is some of the strongest films that we're seeing are the French Canadian ones. But and then oftentimes too, when you look at the stats like the best-selling Canadian films of the year, you'll see that they're from Quebec and they've like hit it out of the park in Quebec. You know, maybe they've sold $1 million in box office or whatever, done really well there. But then you see like what's the rest of Canada, and it's actually quite low. Yeah, I mean, I think that just similar to what I said before, a lot of the French Canadian films are not getting played in in theaters outside of Quebec, and that's certainly the case in Kingston. It's very infrequent to see a French Canadian film at any of our theaters here. Our indie theater that we use for the festival, the screening room, they'll show a few, and then we always do a best of the festival as well after KCFF. So they'll sometimes pop up there as well, but it's it's a rare opportunity to see them at the festival every year, and they're among our best for sure.
I love that you guys also add sort of very much a live performance aspect to the festival as well, like having people like Kevin McDonald come in. How big is it for you guys to try to, I guess, maybe sort of give your audiences a very diversified experience? Because I mean, obviously, Kevin's not necessarily going to be here promoting a film, but he is
Mhm.
definitely here in relevance to the industry in very, you know, in many ways.
Mhm. For sure. Yeah. So my background actually is in music, not in film. So I was a
Okay.
concert promoter for a decade before I started working with the film festival. So like personally speaking, I'm I have a history in presenting things like music and comedy and other things that aren't movies. So I guess it was very easy for me to integrate some of that into the festival. So that never felt weird to me to do that sort of thing. And then I think we've also viewed it as a way to provide different points of entry into the festival. I know when I get, you know, it's nice that we can talk about some of the things that we're talking about today, but when I go on commercial radio and have to talk about the festival, you know, sometimes I'm fishing for some names to like
Right.
to throw out to the, you know, just the average cultural enthusiasts that may not go to the movies regularly. So, you know, you can usually pull out a few Hollywood names in there that are recognizable. But you know, the fact that if we're bringing Kevin McDonald to the festival, or we've had a band like Mother to the festival in the past before, just being able to kind of throw those out there, I think does grab the attention of people that are maybe just not sure of like who Maxime Giroux is, or a filmmaker to me who's awesome, but the average person may not know who they are. Um, but you know, in the case of Kevin, he actually was in a movie that we were going to show in 2020 before we had to cancel. So there is a bit more of a connection with Kevin. But we've ever had everything from like some of the cast from Baroness von Sketch and like Trailer Park Boys and Letterkenny and Kim's Convenience, and you know, some of these names I think in TV are maybe a little bit more popular than some of the names that might be in film. So it's a way for us to attract a bit broader of an audience, and hopefully, if we're attracting them to a Kevin McDonald show or a Mother show while they're here, they can take a chance on some movies or some other programming that they may not otherwise, and usually they find out that they really like it. So it's worked out well for us, and it's just been a skill set that I'm able to bring to the table with my previous job as a concert promoter.
No, I mean, I'm curious, how have you seen the sort of development of the diversity of the program over the years? And I mean, I don't mean in terms of culturally, because I mean, obviously, from like a purely Canadiana standpoint, we're gonna see stories like Bones of Crows, and I mean, people will relate to stories like I Like Movies. But I mean, when we see documentaries in here as well, like like Color of Ink or Black Ice, which really sort of give a different sort of slant than maybe sort of the general audience doesn't expect. How important is it for this festival to try to give as wide a swath of what it means to be a Canadian film to your audience?
Yeah, I think that's part of what we're trying to do, is just paint a bit of a snapshot of where Canadian film is in that year. So, you know, TIFF and some of the fall festivals, I think, mark the bit more of the beginning of what's coming for Canadian film in a cycle, whereas we're we'd fall a bit more, I guess, in what you'd call like award season, you know, with like the Oscars and the CSAs, and so while you go through a program, we do have some world premieres in there, and we most films are at least making like a regional premiere for us, but we have a couple that have been out for a while now, and you know, for somebody in Toronto who maybe saw some of these titles at TIFF, you know, may seem like they're a little older in their release schedule. I think we, instead of trying to say like, come to KCFF where you're going to see everything first for the first time, we're more saying like, this is a bit of a snapshot of where Canadian film's at, and some of the best titles of the year. And in doing so, I think we want to provide, you know, everything from some of the better documentaries to some of the better narratives, and sprinkle in some that maybe were underappreciated or underseen. And then obviously, you know, we always like to show the ones that did well at TIFF too, just to say like, hey, these ones have been really celebrated. So yeah, I think just, you know, as you're scanning through the titles, hopefully we've provided a good cross section of what's been celebrated in Canadian film from the past year.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up though, because I mean, I do have to bring up the world premiere that you do have, because I mean, Den Mother Crimson is, you know, Kingston born, Kingston shot, now Kingston premiered. Like, for you guys, for KCFF, is that a first?
For it being so local, well, yes, but there's actually there's a couple others in this lineup as well, so it might be a first, but it might be a tie with some others that are actually happening.
That's completely fair.
Yeah. So it's a tie for first, I guess. Yeah, there's Den Mother, and then Verona's another one that's world premiering at KCFF, and it was shot just north of Kingston. Sebastian Bach, the filmmaker, he grew up in Verona, and his family still lives in that area, and not an entirely local cast and crew, but very local. And same with the film Sweat. It was actually shot about 50 steps from where I'm sitting right now, in an old factory back behind our office building here, and it's this opera, and it's some of the talents from Toronto, but some's Kingston based as well. So they're making their world premiere at the festival as well. So we do have those three. And then a little bit different, but we're premiering 10 brand new music videos as well, which were all created by local production companies and filmmakers, paired with local musicians as well. So there's a lot of local making its world premiere at the festival this year. But yeah, Den Mother's one that's been in the works for a while, and got a bit of a recognizable director, I think, for people of a certain age, and I think using this as a bit of a proof of concept for other plans that they have with other films as well. So I think they're using this as a bit of a springboard for other films to come as well. So yeah, it's exciting.
I mean, for you guys, that's got to be a bit of a feel good kind of full circle moment. I mean, are you hoping for more of those down the line, or is it just a question of really trying to promote what like not only Canadian film culture, but I mean, really at the same time, Kingston film culture?
Yeah, for sure. I think the year I started with the festival, we would have just had local short films, and maybe around 2015, we started to see a couple features. And there has been features made over the years, but I'm just, in my own experience, there weren't many in my first few years with the festival, which started around 2011 or 12. But in recent years, I would say we've had a Kingston feature almost every year within the last 5 years. And then this is the first year where we've had this quantity for sure. We've never had this much local, and there is a film office now in Kingston. So I think that's helping somewhat. And, maybe just us as well, like saying, if you make a movie in Kingston and it's good, we'll show it. And this is this can be a place to premiere your film and use as a bit of a resume builder, maybe when pitching to other festivals as well, and trying to get your name and get your film out there. So I think sometimes when people see things like this, it encourages them to actually act upon these things and be like, great, if there's a chance my film might actually be able to premiere at KCFF, I might do that thing. I'd also just say more generally too, like within the past 5 years, I'm noticing more creatives moving to Kingston. A lot of them are coming from Toronto, but other areas as well. So, a lot of the people involved in the making of Den Mother Crimson have lived at Toronto in some point of their life and have moved here fairly recently. So I think I'm seeing it in the music world as well. There's just seems to be more interesting creative people moving to Kingston, and I think with that's coming things like films as well.
How have the audience reactions sort of evolved over the years? Because obviously in doing my prep for coming down next week, I was looking everything up. All the venues seem to be relatively close together. Has the local audience sort of started to embrace the vibe of sort of the exploration of what a film festival can be, being able to sort of check out stuff here and there and just sort of be able to take chances, as opposed to sort of planning an event to go see something where they can just go downtown and they can sort of take a chance and maybe improvise and sort of take in what it all has to offer?
Yeah, I think whether people know it or not, I think that is one of the intangible elements that makes the festival special, is the fact that you do need to pick and choose and make some difficult decisions in your when you're planning your itinerary for the festival. Some films might sell out and you'll go to your second favorite film, and
Right.
that might end up being your favorite film that you've seen at the entire festival. That's certainly happened many times in the past. The easy way for us to run the festival would be certainly to put it all in just one big venue and say, like, here's your 1 o'clock, here's your 5 o'clock, here's your 8 o'clock, and everybody goes to the same film. I've been to some festivals that are very successful, kind of using a bit more of a model like that, where just pack as many people as you can into one venue, then kind of the next one and the next one. So I think that is a formula that could work, and I've seen it work. But I think for Kingston, we do have such a nice downtown, and like a lot of interesting pubs and shops and restaurants that a lot of them support the festival and really embrace KCFF and help create that festival experience. I think it's having multiple small venues, many of which are selling out, and not always being able to get into your first choice, I think just plays into that experience that people really like about the festival. And so sometimes if you're going to your second or third film, you are kind of taking a chance on maybe a genre or something that you wouldn't have normally chosen, and hopefully see something that you like.
Well, Mark, I can't wait to be down there and sort of experience this firsthand, because I've heard of it for years. I'm just so happy that it exists, because promoting Canadian film is part of my mandate, and it's an important thing, and I hope we get as many people out as humanly possible to see as many films as possible, because again, our industry is growing at such a fascinating rate. We're really putting out some fantastic stuff, which I think your lineup really sort of is a fantastic example of that, and I hope audiences come out in droves.
Yes, me too. I think they will.
All right, well, cut. That's it for me, Mark. But again, thank you so much for the time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.